Hi, I've decided to summarize all of the best C64 games, and this is the first episode covering spots 253 to 201. So if you're feeling nostalgic for the system or never had a chance to try it out, this is the best place to start. Advance of the Mega Camels is the sequel to the original Attack of the Mutant Camels, which in itself was a follow-up to Grid Runner, and it's an entirely different game. It's not a centipede-like shooter anymore, but a side-view one, putting you behind the steering stick of a space fighter facing an impending and never-ending onslaught of gigantic camels on your base. It's a score attack kind of a game, as its mechanics don't really change at all throughout it. It's an early C64 game too, so you can't really fault it for the simplicity. Rastan is a port from the arcades and a fantasy side-scrolling action platformer. The original character was clearly based on Conan the Barbarian, and the gameplay is kept in a similar theme. As ports to C64 go, this one's not terrible. It's not great either, as not only it's rather slow but also backed with terrible jumping mechanic, making you often leap into oblivion. It's something to get used to and work around perhaps, but also something that can unnecessarily kill you in the middle of the skirmish with buddies when you least expect it. Predator is based on the movie of the same title and puts you in a bulky muscles and veins covered body of Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting through a jungle full of bodies and, well, a predator. That said, given C64's capabilities, you're packed into a group of 20-something pixels and not a real body. Deal with it. Anyway, the game attempts to follow the plot of the movie, at least where possible, and starts with your squad already killed off. While there are two versions of Predator on C64, European and American, and the latter is slower and overall better playing, the differences between them are minuscule and both are too difficult for my liking. Talking about games with two versions, Space Harrier has them too, and the entry we're going to cover today is European, as it's just a tad better. Sega's classic Space Harrier has been a huge hit in the arcades and on most home systems too, offering fast-paced, third-person shooting/flying action and a very decent graphics. Well, C64's version seems not to have received the memo, and its presentation is rather disappointing and the gameplay chaotic, to say the least. I'd say it's shit, but then again many of you loved it, so I'll change it to I was shit at it. I'm sure you're not surprised at all that Buck Rogers' Planet of Zoom is another of those arcade conversions. I mean, in the early 80s it was a norm, and many, if not most home games, were conversions or ports from the arcades. In essence, Planet of Zoom is a sci-fi themed racer in which you must zoom between series of pairs of pylons without crashing. You can move left, right, slow down and speed up, and even shoot. Each level requires a series of pylons to be passed, and each next increases that number gradually. Everyone knows Golden Axe, a cult classic Sega's fantasy arcade beat-em-up in which you go through a series of levels, defeating numerous different monstrosities, trying to find and kill Evil Ruler, Death Adder. You can play as either Barbarian ex-Butler, Dwarf Julius Thunderhead, or Amazon Tyrese Flare. Did you notice how only one of them has no name or surname, but just a function in his naming? Weird. Anyway, C64 Sport may not be the best out-of-home conversions of the game, but given the system's capabilities, it was a fantastic and very faithful to the arcade release. The only thing that always bothered me about it was the lack of multiplayer, which I feel, in a title like that, really benefits replayability. Pole Position is a very decent early port of a fantastic at the time arcade racer. In fact, I've even spoken about the arcade original in my recent Evolution of Racing Games video, because that's how important I consider it to be. C64's version may not be perfect, but given when it released, it was a stellar title and an excellent time attack kind of a game. The graphics are understandably simple, barebone one would say even, but the gameplay is all there and the animations are smooth and satisfying. If you have no other racer for your C64, this one's good enough to keep you playing. There are two ports of Outrun to C64, an American one, and this one hailing straight from the heart of Europe. The American version has a blonde sitting next to a driver, just like in the arcade original, and the stripes on the road are more similar to how they worked in the arcades. The European outing, however, looks a bit better and plays smoother and faster, resulting in a much more satisfying experience. Either of them, however, has a fantastic recreation of the classic arcade tunes, and Splashwave is, was and will always be the best soundtrack to ride your Ferrari Testarossa to. I have very mixed feelings about Robocop on C64. On one hand, it had a pretty nice graphics, particularly the high-res sprites, and it ran rather smoothly despite all of the on-screen action. And on another, it's so difficult, man. I never thought that I'll ever hear myself saying it, to you no less, but I just can't even. It's impossible and it's a pain to play. Well, there's usually a reason for seemingly unexplainable silly design choices as this one, and Robocop has one too. Apparently the last, 6th level was never finished before the game being released, so the devs raised the difficulty in all others considerably, especially in the 5th one, to prevent the gamers from ever getting as far. Ace 2, a follow-up to the first Ace, is still a head-to-head flight combat simulation. Well, I say simulation, but what I really mean is an arcade shooter. It's 1v1 in jet fighters and it's surprisingly addictive if you have a friend to play against. When you're facing the CPU, its staying power is rather limited, but with a buddy, well, it definitely can provide for a couple of hours of dogfight and couch elbow combat. "1942 is a conversion of an arcade original, surprise surprise, and a decently playing even if unnecessarily punishing game. It's one of those ports to C64 that took the word porting to heart, and along with all the 24 levels, sounds and music, the arcade con-munching difficulty landed on the Commodore's system too. Which is silly, as home games didn't need to be as demanding as you only paid for them once. So 1942 is a memorization kind of a game that requires you to memorize all of its enemies' patterns to complete it, as otherwise you'll be a subject to countless often unavoidable deaths. It's definitely not my kind of a shooter. Paperboy on C64 is a two-edged sword. On the first glance and attempt, it may seem annoying, a bit too sensitive to control and rather drab looking. But if you give it time, practice a little, it will grow on you and you'll learn to appreciate it and work around its few little annoyances. It's an okay arcade conversion in which you play as a boy delivering newspapers to its subscribers, riding on your bike along the suburban streets and avoiding obstacles. It's a simple and rather repeatable premise, but also a surprisingly playable one. I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone by now, but Renegade, same as the other half of the games on this list, is an arcade conversion. It's also a side-scrolling beat-em-up, or brawler if you will, which sees you pacifying hundreds if not thousands of bodies on the mean streets of Brooklyn, trying to get to your girlfriend's kidnappers, then kick them to the curb and save her, prompting the happily ever after ending. More or less. There are quite a few different moves to perform, and if you get used to a very unusual controls, utilizing joystick and a keyboard, or two joysticks at the same time actually, it's also a pretty fun playing game. I freaking loved Burger Time back in the day, and this C64 release is an unofficial ripoff. It's unofficial, but it's rather good, despite what some may tell you, and it plays very similar to the arcade original. It's an action platformer in which you play as Chef Peppa and have to create giant hamburgers by dropping all the ingredients onto one another and then plates by walking over them, all the while avoiding enemies or treating them with a handful of pepper to escape them. It's a very simple idea, but a really playable one as well. Rampage is a party game for up to 3 players, which puts you in heights of 3 ginormous monsters: George the Gorilla, Lizzie the Lizard and Ralph the Werewolf, and sends you onto the series of cities that you have to destroy one by one, along with their defending forces. And if that sounds like a hoot, and a time well spent toppling skyscrapers and munching on civilians, you're right, it's exactly that. Eating consumables restores your health, consuming firemen allows you to breathe fire for a short while, and saving damsels in distress rewards you a whole bunch of points. If you have a buddy or two with you and some time, Rampage is a blast. Sanxion is a horizontally scrolling shoot-em-up. Its most unique and well-known feature is that it shows its gameplay from 2 perspectives at once, side and top down. and while it could be argued that it's just an unnecessary gimmick taking precious processing power from the CPU, I say it makes Sanxion a one-of-a-kind game and a title worth experiencing. While the first few levels are not easy, they're definitely bearable, but the latter ones get rapidly more demanding and will put your memory to the test. Oh, and the loading music for Sanxion is fantastic, so if you ever get a chance, definitely check it out. If you've played one Friday the 13th game from the 80s, you've played them all. And no, that's not exaggeration. You and your friends visit Crystal Lake Holiday Camp just to learn that it's haunted by the maniac killer known as Jason Voorhees. So, it will be up to you to find and kill Jason before he gets to you or your friends. And since he likes to play dress up, he will often doppelgang as one of your buddies. Since Jason likes to disguise as them often, you will have to run around the entire camp slapping the shit out of your group of friends to reveal him. You know, sometimes simple is better than feature-packed, and Django Hunt is just that, as simple as they come. It's an action-adventure game in which your beloved Penelope has been taken by the evil cannibals. Are there any other cannibals, really? I seem to recall good ones in one of the Monkey Island games, but I'm not 100% positive on that now. Anyway, it's obviously up to you to go through 4 addictively playable challenges to save her. So you'll swing on the ropes, you'll fight crocodiles underwater, you'll avoid a rain of falling boulders, and you'll face a nefarious cannibal warrior too. It's a fun game to pick up and complete, but it lacks any real staying power. I'm one of the 7 people who never really liked Bomb Jack. The other 6 are sadly no more. And no, they did not die of old age, I'm not that old. They were eliminated by the assassins sent by the Bomb Jack High Lords. In short, BJHJ. Any similarities to other abbreviations are naturally entirely accidental. And while the original arcade bomb collecting full-screen action had some charm to it, even if it was not my cup of tea, this C64 version is too hectic, too fast and too constrained with the screen size to play well. And it makes Bomb Jack a rather frustrating experience. Well, at least to me. The best way I could describe Aliens the computer game would be to call it a first-person squad-based sci-fi horror survival shooter thematically based on the movie of the same title. You are in control of 6 marines and have to take them through a large complex, escaping dangers and fighting off aliens. Since all the soldiers have cameras on their helmets, you control them from a first-person view, and because aliens are so PS compared to them, the feeling of dread and being trapped with a predator always trying to get you never really leaves you throughout the entire adventure. Ballblazer is a 1 or 2 player first-person perspective sports game that could be best described as a mixture of Pong and soccer. I would say football since I'm European, but saying soccer removes all the confusion. That said, this explanation seems to take way more time than necessary, so maybe I should remove it. Nah, I'm leaving it in. Ballblazer, aside from its surprisingly addictive gameplay, was best known for its revolutionary at the time graphics and a banging soundtrack, and it truly delivers on both fronts. Dragon Ninja, aka Bad Dudes, is an arcade side-scrolling simple beat-em-up, mechanically similar to the granddaddy of the genre, Kung Fu Master. So it's a mostly one-hit, one-kill kind of a brawler, and while there was nothing wrong with that, especially in the 80s, today it feels more like a novelty than a game you'd like to go through beginning to an end. Even if it looks rather nice, utilizing high-resolution animated sprite assets. The Dragon Ninja clan has kidnapped the POTUS and you're on the mission to rescue him, alone against thousands of bodies. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Gryzor is a European version of Contra. Yes, that Contra, the one you know from NES. Or actually no, it's a port of the one you know from the arcades. Potato tomato. Still, it's a fantastic 1 or 2 player mostly side-scrolling action shooter in which you complete a series of stages, spreading death and destruction all around, trying to dismantle a terrorist organization known as the Red Falcon. A pretty cool name, I must add. While the C64 port is a pretty faithful and hella fun recreation of the original, it only contains 6 out of 10 of its stages, which is a bit disappointing, but I suppose the constraints of the C64's memory were a factor, and the devs might have wanted it to be a single load release. Cauldron is a nightmare of a beauty. Beauty, cause it's a rather good looking, smoothly animating, genuinely creepy feeling and well-playing game. And Nightmare? Well, because it is one. C64's version is incredibly tough. While the enemies draining your health relentlessly could be somewhat explained with the challenge level being up there to invite repeated attempts at a playthrough, the platforming sections have no excuse for terribly designed stages. Not only jumps require pixel-perfect precision, but badly aimed ones, which let me tell you, will be something you'll experience often, can and will lead to many unnecessary deaths. Other than that, Cauldron is a great game. Funny enough, the first time that I played Saboteur was not on C64, but on a Timex. This C64 Sport is super sweet too, and if you like spy/ninja themed action-adventure games, there are a few better only. Well, there were a few better, today there's probably plenty. Saboteur is a beat-em-up stealth brawler, and it mixes these three seemingly different genres with grace and unbeatable playability. You are sent into the heart of a body's field complex to plant a bomb deep inside and then escape before triggering an explosion. The background story may be simple, but the gameplay will carry you from the moment you launch it till the very end. Or as I've recently learned while replaying it years after, until you fail time after time again, as you just might. One of the two. Not unlike a more famous, and let's not kid ourselves here, better too, International Karate Plus, Bangkok Knights is a versus fighting game focusing on one martial art. In its particular case, Thai boxing, also known on the streets as let's see how your teeth will take a rather rapid hit from my knee. The included set of moves is decent and as realistic as it was possible to achieve on an underpowered 8-bit machine. And the presentation, I mean, just look at it, it's fantastic. Sprites take nearly half of the screen and animate super smoothly. Given the lack of special fiery or explosive attacks and only superficial differences between the opponents, the single-player mode lacks staying power. But in multiplayer, oh, it's a blast. C64 was known for amazing sounds and music thanks to its incredible SID chip, for its popping graphics thanks to its rather fast and smooth sprite handling and a 16-color palette, and games because of the hundreds if not thousands of amazing releases that it received over the years. And while Pitstop is an early title gracing our machines in 1983, it dropped like a pile of bricks on an unsuspecting C64 audiences and offered them the ultimate for the time racing experience. It's an incredible little speedster that will keep you coming back for more. While C64's Pac-Land port is as close to the original as it was possible given the resources available on the system, by the time Pac-Land arrived on the machine, it was already a 4-year-old game. And 1984's gameplay in 1988 felt at the very least archaic. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad game at all, it just felt a bit outdated on the first day it graced our little 8-bit powerhouses. It's an action platformer starring everyone's favorite yellow dog, in a little wild shoes and red hat no less, looking like a boss that he actually was in a completely different game. One we'll get to talk about in one of the future videos. If Vendetta looks eerily similar to you to The Last Ninja, good, because it was made by System 3 and on the same engine. As you can see, it's naturally a top-down isometric action-adventure with some car racing segments in between its regular levels. And if you think, wow, that's pretty cool, a rather varied C64 game, think again, because these driving sections are pretty crap. Your main mission is to save your brother and his daughter, and as you do just that, also clear your name gathering evidence against the true kidnappers. Shadow of the Beast was a game that was made purely to show off Commodore's latest 16-bit machine, the Amiga 500, and its pure processing power and capabilities. And as such, it was a marvel, with all the multi-level parallaxing, huge sprites and beautiful sounds and graphics. As a game, however, it lacked any real substance and was just a memorization type of affair, with numerous unnecessary death traps and some annoying enemy respawn mechanics. So seeing it released on C64 was a bit surprising. And what was even more unexpected was that it was the exact same way. So, also a show-off of what the system was capable of in the hands of talented devs paired with mediocre and memorization-based gameplay. Roadrunner is a simple arcade depiction of the classic cartoon as they come. So you play as the road runner, and your task is to, well, keep running, on the road no less, and avoid any and all dangers like trucks, landmines, falling rocks and the likes, and not get caught by the wily e-coyote. You are also to eat birdseed along the way to keep your strength, and the scores are awarded for all the seeds that you eat and for all the traps that your nemesis falls into. It's a pretty solid and accurate arcade conversion, and a decent game for a couple of playthroughs. It's uncanny how well as big and as advanced simulation as SimCity works on a lowly C64. I mean, sure, graphically or from a sound design point of view it's a dog, nay, a dirty mat, but when the gameplay is taken under consideration, it's fantastic. Also, mats deserve love and care too. Note that down. Anyway, it's an incredibly designed, thought-out and made city simulation in which you're responsible for everything. From layout of the roads, through supplying it with electricity, to zoning and all the necessary services, all to keep it prospering and growing and the money outside of the red. It's naturally a much better looking game on more powerful systems, but content-wise, C64 version is not lagging behind them at all. Not unlike over half of the games we've spoke about today, Mikie is an arcade port. And it puts you in the high school shoes of the titular Mikie who has to run around the school and its numerous classrooms collecting hearts. And the idea here is to spell out a word or short sentence by doing so. You pick up hearts by shouting at them when beside them, and the small ones are picked up after just one of these outbursts, while the big ones require around 3. While you do all that, however, the teacher, chef and janitor are trying to stop you. It's a score type of a game, and as such, it's pretty fun. Aud Wiedersehen Monty is a super fun, classic flip-screen action platformer starring everyone's favorite, at least in the mid-80s in UK and on the ZX Spectrum, Monty Mole. And Aud Wiedersehen Monty is a follow-up to earlier and equally as good Monty on the Run. Aud Wiedersehen Monty means goodbye Monty in German, and peace out rodents come in Latin if you were wondering. Monty is being chased by the Intermol agency, so he has to collect plenty enough cash around Europe to purchase himself a secluded island and run away to live there. It's not a smart story perhaps, but honestly, did 8-bit platformers needed those at all? While I wouldn't call Bounder an unknown title, it's definitely one that disappeared in the sea of other, more flashy and action-packed shooters, platformers or racers, which is a shame as it's a rather banging release and unexpectedly playable game. You play as a small tennis ball that has to bounce around the 10 levels the game is composed of, making sure to always land on grey platform squares and not fall off of them. Some of the squares may have bonuses on them, like long jumps or teleports, and learning all of them fast and their best use case scenarios is a key to success. Either way, if you wanna play a genuinely fun, but devoid of any shootings, racing or platforming game, Bounder is the way to go. I may be wrong, because it was a long time ago, although not as long as when the game released, but I believe that Moon Patrol may be the very first C64 game that I've ever played. And for the first experience with the system, despite its rather simple graphics and gameplay, it was a stellar introduction to the little beast that could. The idea here is rather simple: to keep driving right, avoiding or jumping over any obstacles, all the while killing aliens and not getting killed yourself. And as per usual when something's easy to explain, it's difficult to achieve. And while Moon Patrol starts easy, the difficulty quickly ramps up and soon enough it becomes a truly demanding game. Hunchback is an action platformer in which you play as the titular Hunchback on a mission to rescue a beautiful Esmeralda Agata Carmena Gonzalez Cardamon from the clutches of an evil mayor who imprisoned her in High Tower. And to do so, you'll need to travel through a stronghold full of dangers, flying arrows, fireballs, fire pits, pikemen, and many, many more. You know, I always wondered how such a hero as our Hunchback or even Mario has to go through all these hoops to save the damsel in distress, just for the game to end when he gets to her. And no game ever shows him actually going back through all of these same dangers, but this time with the saved girl. Weird, isn't it? Falcon Patrol is a two-way side-scrolling action shooter in which you are flying a vertical takeoff and landing fighter, taking on series of enemy crafts attacking the city. Both rockets and fuel are limited, but there are a series of landing platforms scattered around the game's metropolis which you can use to restock. Doing so, however, leaves you temporarily vulnerable. And let me tell you, the enemies are not sleeping, and with each next wave there's more and more of them, and they're more and more aggressive. Either way, if you like shooters, Falcon Patrol is a brilliant little game and a time well spent defending those who cannot defend themselves. Thunderblade is such a weird port to C64. I mean, the arcade game that it is based on is a fast, joint third-person and top-down shooter in which you're flying an attack copter through 12 action-packed levels, destroying anything and everything that dares to enter the screen, or stand in your way, potato tomato. What makes C64 version unusual is that it looks terrible. Despite releasing in 1987, it looks like some of these early 83 or 84 games, and the scaling effect known from the arcade original is, well, special here. But, and that's the most important thing here, despite looking like a piece of old gum suspended in a puddle of murky water, Thunderblade plays really well. I mean, the collision detection may not be perfect and the gameplay speed could improve too, but it's just fun. I freaking loved Ping Pong on my C64. I mean, it's a simple game, there are no rule modifiers, no upgrades, power-ups or anything else, but the bare-bone table tennis gameplay that it offers? Chef's kiss, my dear viewers. It's a fast, demanding, but also perfectly controlling title which is as good against CPU as it is when playing with a friend. And it's also a very skill-based game, meaning that when you fail to connect with your shot or serve, it's not the controls, it's not the game, it's you. You having to practice and get better. It's an A+ game and one I would recommend to any and all C64 gamers. Pitfall originated on Atari 2600 and most likely that is the version that everyone remembers, loves and considers an ultimate outing. But C64's port, despite a bit murkier colors and an asshole of a scorpion chasing you relentlessly, is a pretty cool version as well. All of the content found in the original, all the screens, hazards and enemies are here, and it plays nearly as good as it did on the platform of its spawning. You're Harry Pitfall, a legendary treasure hunter who's on an adventure to seek out and uncover the great riches hidden deep in the Mayan jungle. I vaguely remember Popeye cartoons, though they were never really as popular here as they were in the States, and also when I was a kid they were already really old, so chances of catching them airing anywhere were rather minuscule. That said, I did so a few, and I'm familiar with all the characters despite not following the cartoons daily. And Popeye on C64, another of those countless arcade ports, is one of my favorite games on the system. You naturally play as the teacherless sailor, and you are trying to win Olive Oil's love by collecting tokens of her love that she drops. This can be hearts, notes or whatever, the point is you gotta grab them before they cross the bottom of the screen. Birds and magically flying bottles along with Brutus are there to stop you, and you should avoid them not to fail. From time to time you get to consume a can of spinach, giving you super sailor powers, and then you can teach all three a lesson. Dig Dug is a game that I wasn't smart enough to appreciate when it was relatively new, but that's on me and a story for a completely different video. It's an arcade title for 1 or 2 players, which sees you digging in dirt, defeating enemies. But so that your life would not be too easy, these monsters roam the tunnels that you dig and try to stop you. You can either use rocks to drop on the bodies to squash them, or your trusty pump, which I've no idea why you're carrying with you, to inflate them to the point that they will explode. The idea behind the gameplay and level progression mechanic might be simple, but the fun is definitely in abundance. Shootouts, car chases, explosions, jumps and series of tricks, all of that is in the Action Biker. Or it is not, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad game, even if it's devoid of these truly action-packed moments. In Action Biker, you play as Clumsy Colin, a character from a British comic buster, and you have to ride around obstacles-covered map, collecting clothes and bike parts to enter a drag race. It's the collecting part that's the heart of the game though, and you will have to ride around different platforms, fenced-off areas, jump over obstacles, and in general, you'll look in every nook and cranny of the map trying to source all these dropped items. If you've played one Tetris, you've played them all, and I don't recall playing a really bad version of the game. So, this 1988 C64 version is a feature-rich outing following all of the common rules of the game. So the Tetro miners fall from the top of the screen and you have to arrange them on the game board so that they would form full lines, which then disappear, adding to the score. If at any point the screen would fill up, the game would end too. If there's one thing that I would change about this version of the game, it's the scrolling, which is a bit flickery for the lack of a better word. And while it's not an issue gameplay-wise, it tends to get annoying after a little while. There are 3 asteroids within a far-off asteroid belt that house hidden caches of precious gems and rare minerals. They are treated as vaults to hold these priceless items in relative safety for when they are needed the most. Zugians, evil aliens bent on destruction of all life, found them however, and it's now your mission to fly the experimental spacecraft dubbed Cybernoid to recover the riches. While Cybernoid is an arcade shooter, it's more of a methodical one, in which careful planning and correct choice of weaponry for the challenges ahead work better than an all-guns blazing approach. Miner 2049er is another of those super simple looking games that excel in playability. It's also a real tough cookie to crack, and you will die left and right while playing, but you will also keep coming back for more. It's a flick-screen action platformer starring Bounty Bob, miner by trade, drunk by the midday. And the game sees you completing stages by walking over platforms which then change their color. And when all of them do, you get to move to the next level to repeat the same process in a new environment facing different enemies. While the gameplay mechanics themselves are not too complicated, making Miner 2049er a title easy to get into, the constantly ticking down timer and pixel-perfect jumps make it a rather demanding game. BMX Simulator is not a simulator at all. It's all BMX though, so it's at least 50% accurate. Well, while it may not be entirely spot on that title, it's definitely full 100% fun if you have someone to play it against. Because same as with most other racers of the kind, it's the most enjoyable experience when played against others and not that great when facing the CPU. I mean, it's not bad when racing against C64, but it's nowhere near as good as when you play it with a buddy. I really can't tell you how many hours I've spent playing 10th frame with friends, but it was a lot. I mean, we've played it even before we learned the rules of bowling, and there's a good reason for that. Because as games covering the sport on C64 go, this one's definitely the best. It offers a single game mode and an entire season, up to 8 players multiplayer, hooking, spinning, intuitive and easy to grasp controls that are also demanding to master, and a super smooth and lifelike animations. And the fact that it was made by the Carver brothers, the very same responsible for borderline genius leaderboard golf, made it an instant pickup back in the day. Ninja is a side-scrolling screen-flicking beat-em-up starring world's greatest assassin, a ninja. Funny enough, while visiting Japan, I learned a lot about ninjas, and they were more like spies than assassins, and they did not really train to fight or kill, rather to move stealthily and escape danger. In fact, any average samurai could probably take more than one ninja at a time in a direct combat and win. Also, shurikens were not used for killing, but to make sound and distract those who chased the ninja. Who knew? Anyway, this iteration of ninja is naturally more than capable of spreading death and destruction. And not only does so near constantly, but also collects gold idols. You know, something ninjas are known for. Target Renegade is an unofficial sequel to Renegade we've spoken about earlier, and a considerably better side-scrolling arcade brawler. Mr. Big, so the villain of the series, is back, and this time he kidnapped your brother. And since no one's allowed to F around with your family, you head off to Big's big pen, his quote-unquote base of operations on the upper side of the town, to explain to him by means of broken limbs and teeth flying everywhere that your brother's place is not in captivity. As C64's beat-em-ups go, I have to say that this is one of the best, with beautiful high-resolution sprites, numerous attack moves, and different collectible weapons to use against a variety of bodies. If you've not played it, fix it today. Whenever I look at games like Manic Miner, so high-resolution single-color sprites on black backgrounds and sparsely placed objects, I think of ZX Spectrum that suffered from terrible color clash. Fortunately, C64's Manic Miner suffers from nothing other than a bit inflated difficulty level. It's a flick-screen platformer in which you play as Miner Willy, who who must travel through 20 caverns, some levels if you will, and collect all treasure scattered around them, avoiding all the enemies, hazards and falls from great height before the time runs out. Back in the early 80s, the king and queen of the prom, at least in the arcades, were Donkey Kong and Miss Pac-Man respectively, and Donkey Kong was Nintendo's first huge hit on the market. It was so big in fact that ports of the game appeared on home hardware literally within months, if not weeks, and C64 received two versions of the game, one by Atari Soft and one by Ocean. Both had their own up and downsides, but it's the Atari Soft one that you're currently watching. It's basically a one-to-one recreation of the arcade hit, in which, playing as Mario, you have to rescue Pauline from Donkey Kong. Yeah, not Princess Peach or Toadstool, but Pauline. Weird. You have to avoid bodies and barrels thrown by DK, and can pick up a hammer power-up to be able to destroy them. So, did you like what you saw? Do you think that C64 was a fun system to have and play games on? Yeah, so do I. That said, there are 4 more episodes to go, and the deeper we will get and closer to that elusive first spot, the better the titles will be. So hopefully you'll join me in the next few as well. If you liked the video, hit those like, sub, share and bell icons too, for YouTube to let you know when I release something new. For me this is all, so take care of yourself and I'll talk to you soon.